Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Andromeda 7 Celestial Gateway, Esoteric Egypt, Part 10. It's good to see everyone this evening. And then I want to thank you, David Knoll, for joining us, and Dalibor for stepping up and offering to do a show about this Ormus gold powder.
Well, it's something I have experienced on my own by manufacturing it, by doing some research on it, and having taken it for about a year now.
Yeah, great. Well, we can't wait to hear the benefits that you've received from it. And Mandy, our fellow alchemist here on board here, who's following right along with us. Thank you from Australia. And Lori, of course, who's driving the bus here and taking care of everything and making sure everything runs smoothly.
Yep.
And you all know David Knoll, the folks in the chat room. The folks that are listening in don't really know him all that well. He's only been on here a couple of times, but he's our shaman in training. He knows a lot. He's very well connected, and he's got a lot of experiences and knows a lot about herbs and American Indian traditions and ways. So that'll help to add because this alchemizing of gold and other metals and other herbs, we'll be talking about that on Friday night, working with herbs, how the shamans work with healing and herbs. But as far as this goes, this is quite the process. And I did a little write-up for you guys to do an orientation. Some of you heard David talking about this a couple of days ago on his show. He was helping to prep for this one too, by talking it through. And I just wanted to touch base with a general overview real quick before we get into the details, because there's listeners who aren't in our chat who are listening to this, some of them for the very first time because they're curious, others because they've been thinking about it. But gold, has captivated the imaginations of many. And a lot of civilizations throughout ancient times have built temples and palaces of gold, and they fought wars over it, and so on and so forth. So, but what is alchemy? What is the traditional definition of alchemy? What is an alchemist, and what do they do? And compare that and contrast that with today's chemists or today's folks in the spiritual realm who don't have any chemistry background but are performing various types of alchemy. So what is it when we're talking about an alchemist is the one thing that we want to get to. And then from there, we'll get into a deeper explanation of how it works. So we have a slideshow, Dalibor. Do we want to start with that to sort of give the overview and then get into the more detail, in-depth explanation of it? And we can pause.
Sure.
We can pause there for the definition.
I would say I would define alchemy as kind of an umbrella term, and as an umbrella term, it's almost impossible to define. I would equate alchemy almost to music. How would you describe music? What is music? There's as many different types of alchemy as there are types of music. With nothing to really connect them together, except the fact that you could define music as something that sounds good. And similarly, you could define alchemy as something that improves people's lives. Usually that involves some kind of chemical processing, something to do with chemistry. Although, some have said that it's like the antecedent to chemistry or the precursor to chemistry. I would suggest that it would be more like the intellectual ancestor of a whole bunch of sciences, including chemistry, but also psychology, metaphysics, and physics itself. So that's like saying science. What is science? How would you define it? And you can be a scientist or an alchemist or a musician with no qualifications, or the best qualifications in the world. You could be so well versed in all the musical scales, all the musical notes, all the instruments, and still be a crappy musician. Same with science. Same with alchemy. And similarly, you could be a person of zero chemical knowledge like myself, and produce your own Ormus, make your own colloidal silver, make your own tinctures, essences, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll get back. We're going to add on to that and let David bring in his perspective on that in just a second. I just wanted to do a quick hello, folks joining us in chat, because I didn't get a chance to do that yet. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So Ken and Barry Chad, Elderberry, Kelly. Who do you see in there, Lori? I see Steve.
Johan Dancing Gypsy.
Yeah.
Gaz's Backyard.
Yeah.
Janine. Steve Clark, always good to have Steve with us. Michelle McFree, good to see you. Yep.
Mary.
David Castle, as usual. Love that. Say hi to Rufus. Julianne Margaret. She looks like she's doing some baking and listening. So awesome. Wish I could have some of those goodies. I think that's about it.
Hi, Sister Mary. Mary Wins is there.
Oh, yeah. Mary. Good to see Mary.
Yeah. So awesome. Other folks will drift in. There's Lucky Stone. Mm-hmm. Other folks will drift in, and then
William Swan Jr. Good to have you with us as well.
Welcome back, William. Thank you. So David, what is your definition? What did you find in your background about how you would define alchemy, and when especially as it pertains to metal?
Very closely related to what Dalibor says, and think of it as a mixture. As he used music, a mixture of music, tones, sounds, chords. So in looking for a definition of it, some included philosophy, astrology. They added all the sciences into that. And sometimes they kind of left out chemistry. And so there have been root doctors since the beginning of man. Okay, we just have to consider that. There have been root doctors and people who've used leaves and teas and things for a long, long, long time. Okay, and these are ancient traditions. So alchemy goes back to these people. The first person to ever put a leaf in some hot water was the first alchemist. You know what I'm saying? So, but anyway, it's very inclusive. And it's a lot more ancient than people would like to to describe, because they don't consider root doctors or 5 or 6 10,000-year-old shamans to know anything about it, but if they mixed any kind of potion or poultice to put on a wound, whatever it was, though, they were the first alchemists. So anyway, just wanted to throw that in there.
No, that's great. Mandy, did you want to add anything to that? Your understanding of what alchemy means to you?
I don't believe alchemy needs to be done in the scientific lab. I believe alchemy is anything that we put heart into and wonder what the scientific outcome, or wonder what the outcome is. Not having a defined outcome before we start and just going, let's see what happens. You're putting love, heart, and soul into it. It's anything from as simple as putting a leaf in water to it could be even putting the seed in the ground. Like, it doesn't necessarily, the alchemy could start before the leaf even appears. Ultimately, it's anything you go into and going, I wonder what's going to happen when I do this.
Is it changing the property or value of something, alchemy? I can stick a leaf in water and not change the physical aspects of that leaf. Now I can add chemicals, or I can add other ingredients that might change.
Or if you add knowledge to it. If you add knowledge to any kind of process by, for example, separating things, let's say you have gold ore or gold bearing sand. Well, if you separate all the useless stuff from the gold, then you've imparted some sort of knowledge, some sort of technology to it, and made that gold or that remnant much more valuable. So alchemy would be like the application of knowledge or some kind of technology to any kind of process, and that also applies to architecture. We see that in architecture is one of the first technologies that were developed by ancient humans, besides clothing, which is a technology in its own right. And I would say that the alchemical equivalent of Ormus in architecture would be the pyramid, because the effects of the Ormus would be very similar on living organisms as the shape of the Great Pyramid of Giza, or any other similar pyramid that follows that same mathematical model.
Well, but then you have materials that work a certain way together that cause a certain outcome. you might define the outcome that's created as the alchemy, but you haven't changed the properties of the three ingredients. For example, the inside of the pyramids are pink granite that serves a function, a purpose, has a certain energy about it. Then you have copper wiring, possibly, and crystals, and then the gold capstone. All of these materials and of themselves individually have certain qualities that when mixed together or used in a certain way with sound and the metaphysic component of intent, produce a certain outcome. And we speculated what those different various things were that it was used for, but that doesn't mean we've alchemized any of those one material. We haven't changed the properties of any one of those individual materials. We've combined them together, but not in a chemical way. Go ahead, Mandy.
Have you changed the vibration of that, though? By putting the leaf in the water, have you ultimately changed the frequency and vibration of that leaf and slowed it down by putting it in the water, which is a change, but it's just not a change that we can observe?
True.
But it's not a physical change.
Well, it is.
It's a vibrational change, right?
A vibrational change, which is a physical, because everything's physical. Everything comes down to vibration. The only reason this is wood is because these molecules vibrated at the same density to come together to form this. So you have ultimately changed the vibration. It's just not an alchemical response that you would be able to pick up on the eyesight level. Maybe
when you take that leaf out of the water and put it back on the table, and it's not responding to that frequency anymore, and it's gone back to its state of just being, you haven't really transformed that leaf and turned it into something else. You've used its properties to help bring about an outcome.
Structure.
You haven't changed the physical structure of the leaf. So that's where people get hung up on what true alchemy is versus the act of alchemy, or going through the process of alchemy, or using the art of alchemy, which is the same thing as we say today, using the scientific method. It's using the process of alchemy to produce an outcome. Mm-hmm. But have we actually transformed anything or changed anything? We've produced a result, but we haven't really changed the actual properties of any one material. So that's what I wanted to get into with this next slide here. And I'm not trying to say that we're not alchemists. Don't get me wrong, everybody. I can see the arrows coming. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to get a clear definition of what it is we're doing here and what we think we're doing, and how our thoughts, how we can create with the alchemy process. But I want to show what they were doing in ancient times. So let's bring up the slides.
Can I say something while you're doing that?
Yes, you certainly can. Anytime.
Mandy Moore and Dalabar are bringing into the equation of alchemy the metaphysical.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Which is, we have not talked about the metaphysical. We talked about the physical, philosophy, chemical. This is metaphysical. It's another layer of this alchemy. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, it's another layer.
David. Mm-hmm.
And I think that it started out with this other layer, and I want to show you. Let's go to the age-old spirituality and materialism of gold. We're going to start with gold because the science of alchemy, actually, from my understanding, is that it started with the transformation of different kinds of metals. They were trying to create something out of different metals. But here, in terms of how it was used over time, in the chakras, it's associated with the solar plexus. Gold is also in the tree of life as Tepereth, the son of God. This is the sphere of the sun and associated with the Sumerians. Well, can you pronounce that, Delabar?
Guailadier half.
Guailadier half, wow. In this Celtic tradition, where the souls of the dead eventually go to, gold was also considered, you found it in the land of the fairies. To the Christians, it would be heaven, wherein the streets are paved in gold. All legends, it represents perfection, a perfect unison of heaven and earth, where the higher and lower spheres can join. So there was a tremendous interest in the alchemizing of other metals into gold. When they couldn't get their hands on it, they wanted to find ways to produce it. And next slide. So even in their palaces, it was so important to them in their spiritual awakening and in their spiritual practices that everything was lined in gold. Their palace rooms had inlays, their statues, everything was gold. So it was a tremendous resource for them. Another reason to produce gold if you can't get your hands on it. Next one. Even in the legends of the Greeks, such as King Midas of Phrygia, everything he touched, remember that legend, turned to gold? Yep. And he was not so smart. In the end, he got into a lot of trouble with that. So, and it shows up in our myths and our legends. If you go to even in children's fairy tales or even in legends. Next slide. You had people drawing and depicting dragons hoarding gold. It was so important that even dragons would covet it, yep. Along with other jewels and gemstones. So it had such importance. Next one, Lori, mm-hmm. that even in India, where they caught on to the alchemy practices, I think around the same time the Egyptians did, although they're crediting the Egyptians as being the first to actually practice alchemy. In India, they have known metallic medicines for centuries, preparing the Ayurvedic medicines known as bhasmas from metals and minerals. What are bhasmas, Dalibor?
I'm not sure, but one of my Indian friends told me that in India they make these candies for kids that are actually covered with silver foil. And silver foil, or for like the really upper class kids, they make some that are covered with gold foil, and you eat the whole thing. And the gold and or the silver is actually so thin that it's only 6 atoms thick, and it's almost transparent, and it dissolves inside the stomach, and it purportedly has a beneficial effect on the body.
Wow.
Bhasmas are metallic herbal preparations. They're unique.
Metallic herbal preparations. Okay, this is getting in. We're getting in there. The ancient Indian scientist Nagarjuna conducted many lab experiments on metallurgy and alchemy. He introduced gold shine, a mechanism now used in jewelry industry. A historian describes it as a famous different representations of him in this art piece that you're seeing here. Down below, you're seeing an ancient room that was uncovered of an alchemist's lab in India, of where they prepared their metals and were practicing their art.
Looks like alchemy. A cave.
It does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It looks to me like a great big oven there in the back.
Oh yeah,
a bell-shaped oven of some kind.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because you do need, if you're going to be playing with metals, you do need high temperatures, and that was probably, he probably had some kind of a source of compressed air, usually through a mechanical system of bellows, to reach those really high temperatures that you need to melt things like gold.
Mm-hmm. Truth Seeker says there's also a tradition called Siddha medicine in South India that uses metals. So that's another part of Indian. Let's go into the next slide and we'll show you. So alchemy itself is believed to have originated in ancient Egypt. It was known as chemia, or the black arts, which was referring to the rich black soil of the Nile. They were using that soil in the Nile for different types of alchemy. When it spread to the Arabias, they used the word alchemia, They put the AL in front of it. So that's how it became.
That literally means from chemia.
From chemia.
From chemia, as in from Egypt. And we have almost every word that's preceded with an al comes from Arabic. And like, for example, the word alcohol, that's a typical one. And that was also used in ancient Egyptian, but for a different purpose and with a different meaning. The alcohol, the kohol means coal, literally. And what they would do is they would take coal and grind it up into a fine powder and mix it with alcohol and rub it around their eyes as a form of makeup to keep from getting glare in the hot Egyptian sun. And that's since it was like an alcohol suspension. That's where actually the name alcohol comes from. It comes from the word for coal.
Oh, yeah. See, that was something I picked up. I didn't know that the other day until you told me that.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Audrey. Welcome. Next slide, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we're going to go into the actual process, the different processes that the ancients used. And Dalibor has his own that he's going to share with us of his experiments. But I want to give a little bit of the background on how it was different things that were done with gold for healing purposes before we get into Dalibor's actual experiences, right, Dalibor?
Yeah.
So next slide. So one of the requirements that they had and notations have been made about it by historians is that all alchemical preparations is that the mineral or the ore that you are supposed to be working with is actually living. It's alive. It comes from the earth without being tampered with. It's a natural ore. So they didn't use anything fake or anything made up. They went straight for, that was a requirement. It had to come from nature. It had to be in its natural raw source. Some gold oils, for example, are made only from pure gold nuggets, either from a mine or panned from water. It has to be in its natural state to be alive and still contain the essential spirit or soul of the element, because your metaphysical aspects of that too there.
Mm-hmm.
The bodies of metals are domiciles of their spirits when their terrestrial substances by degrees made extended, thought forms, and purified. The life and fire hitherto lying dormant is excited and made to appear. For the life of which dwells in the metals is laid hid, as it were, asleep, nor can it exert its power or show itself unless the bodies be first dissolved and turned into their radical source. Being bought to this degree at length by abundance of their internal light, they communicate their tinging properties to other imperfect bodies. This came from the Golden Treaty of Hermes Trismegistus. The sulfur of the metals is an oiliness extracted from the metals themselves, endowed with very many virtues for the health of man. That's from Pericles.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Next.
Paracelsus.
Oh, thank you. Is it Celsius?
Yeah, Paracelsus.
Blah, 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 blah. Thank you.
You're doing great.
To make the metals medical, one has to purify the gold from all impurities through laboratory methods and extract the sulfur of the gold, which is the oiliness. This contains the medicinal properties of the gold. Of late, there has been an interest in gold as a medicine, a kind of revival in the Ormus movement, or monatomic gold. This type of medicinal gold is different from the spagyric metallic gold oil in that it uses the gold naturally occurring in certain substances in nature and is not spagyrically. I just had spaghetti, so it's like
I know I'm seeing spaghetti.
I'm seeing spaghetti noodles prepared in the alchemical way.
Spagyrically.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Separating the three essentials of the mineral herb or ore. See, this was new. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is coming from a metal. and purifying and perfecting it to its highest vibrational level and physical purification. The gold is then stripped of its impurities, and only the sulfur or the oil or soul of the gold is extracted and used as a medicine. Alchemized processes create a bridge between the kingdoms, enabling the metals and minerals to be utilized by the body as a medicine that would otherwise be toxic and too removed from an animal system.
Isn't it interesting that when you go to the dentist, they put gold in your mouth because it's compatible with your body?
Or silver.
Or silver, yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting.
I can't have silver. I'm highly allergic to it. So they always use gold caps for me.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So next slide.
You got it.
Amalgamated gold powder for various uses. Now, this is the powder instead of the oil, right? We're getting to that, right, Delbert?
Yeah. Yeah.
Saffron of gold, or aurum fulminans, was made by pouring aqua regia, hydrochloric acid plus sulfuric, water and oil of tartar onto thin plates of gold. Then they dry it on a paper by gentle fire, at least it explodes on them. So children, don't do this without your parents being present.
Actually, that's not going to explode, no. And you don't even need the oil of tartar onto thin plates of gold. You just take the gold, and it doesn't even have to be thin plates, and mix it with the aqua regia, which is just a mixture of hydrochloric and sulfuric acids. And that is actually the only substance that dissolves gold, is aqua regia.
Remember, it said it was made by this process. This was the process they used to use.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about a modification of the process, which bears the same results. Right?
One of them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Saffron of gold was said to cause sweat and drive out noxious humors. It may be given in the smallpox and measles, and it's also reported to stop vomiting. Back in 1839, gold was still prescribed for promoting secretions and to strengthen the kidneys. Terchloride, that was a new one for me.
Terchloride, peroxydiodide, and tercyanide.
Mm-hmm. Used in the treatment of syphilis and also chronic skin diseases, as well as some tumors. I wonder if it would help me with my psoriasis. All right, that's from the Radcliffe Infirmary in Oxford. In the 20th century, it was used against tuberculosis. Everything was. They threw everything at tuberculosis.
Yep.
Solutions of gold proved to inhibit the growth of tubercle bacilli in a culture of the disease. In 1930, Forestier introduced gold treatment of rheumatoid arthritis in 1930. Now, I had an uncle who was a firefighter who suffered terribly from arthritis, and he drank an elixir of gold flecks. And when I found out what it was his favorite brandy of some kind that he bought, and they actually sold this with the gold flecks in it. I wonder if people know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I've seen it before. Mm-hmm.
And you could pour a glass of it and see the gold flecks floating around in it. And he drank that every day in a shot glass to treat his arthritis.
Wow.
And it worked for him. Next slide. Value-added benefits of potable gold. Alchemists believed that it would cure all known diseases and confer immortal youth. Now, I understood about the healing, but I didn't realize it had this property that they thought would make you immortal, like the fountain of youth. Egyptians believed it built the subtle body, ensuring a strong presence in the afterlife and bringing health and healing to the physical body. As gold was the sun, and the sun was Ra, it conferred immortality upon the person infused with the sun god Ra. By the 17th century, alchemy had given way to chemistry, and yet medicines made from gold were still popular. Gold strengthens the heart and vital spirits, so they say, and in cordials, it resists melancholy, swooning, fevers, falling sickness, and all such like infirmities. So it sounds like it was, I don't know what that noise is.
No, it's crazy.
So it sounds like it's used for just about anything. And next slide. Although there's been no modern clinical trials, is this true, Dalibor? There have been no modern clinical trials. Benefits that have been reported after taking a few drops of the gold oil every few days have spiritual, energetic effects. An opening of the chakra or energy center of the body, clarity of mind and thought, more energy, improved memory, right? Some have reported things as miraculous as being cured of a disease such as hepatitis C, for which there's no known cure. Another reported having a myocardial infraction spontaneously heal and a remission of AML after taking gold. Antimony and other herbs in a mixture. Right? Next one. So this was interesting. So I've taken all this in and come across this piece about the three kings. Remember the frankincense, myrrh, and gold? I remember being taught that this was supposed to be a prophetic story of how Christ would become Savior and die on the cross and be buried, and that these spices were representing his death. I'm like, what an odd gift to give to a newborn child, especially one that you thought was going to be a powerful Messiah. So it's interesting, and we're going to get into what frankincense and myrrh does with the gold in a little bit here. But what do you think about this, Delbert? Why would they give?
Well, it's also interesting. Aspect of this story is like, where did these three kings come from? And by some accounts, they came from Sumer and or Babylon, which is the same place that Abraham came from. Abraham came from Ur, and Ur was one of the Sumerian megacities of that day. You know, so he was actually Babylonian. He was the first Jew, and he left Ur. Moved around a couple of places, and then you have Jesus born, whatever the significance of that being, and these kings coming from the east, from Babylon, to bring him these three gifts. And some have speculated that they mean different things, that they symbolize like the body, the spirit, and the soul. The gold being the physical body, the frankincense being the soul, and the myrrh being the spirit. Now, I don't know. In our tradition, our Czech tradition, we traditionally burn frankincense on Christmas Eve, and it has like a unique smell that you just can't get anywhere else. It's a very pleasant smell. Some people say that it increases concentration, that it improves health, that sort of thing. Even though they do use it during funerals, ostensibly to reduce the odor of the dead body, but. And as an altar boy, as a former altar boy, I can confirm that they do use frankincense during the funeral ceremony.
Now connect the futuristic dots here.
In what sense?
Well, take for example, the frankincense covered the body odor of a decaying body.
Mm-hmm.
The gold elixir was supposed to help you to rejuvenate life, bring back life, or extend life. The myrrh wasn't too far different from the frankincense. They're both out of tree bark.
Mm-hmm.
They both have similar qualities with some slight differences. But if this was supposed to be prophetic of his rising from the grave, rising from the dead, they wrapped his freshly slain body and wrapped it in frankincense, gold, and myrrh, then they were essentially trying to say that these were the gifts to bring him back.
Could be, that these would be the things that would bring about the resurrection. But
so I don't know. It's like why they're saying it's prophetic of his death, and these were the spices that were used to wrap his body. So I don't know. It's just a story, as Jules would say if she were here. It's just a story, but didn't actually come out and say that. Did they, David? In any scripture that I'm aware of, that's what these would be used for. I'm just making an assumption.
There are lots of people who make assumptions. And they assume, and it could have been that there were three kings who brought gifts and they were valuable in and of themselves, and there might not have been any connection, but there are folks that like to spin yarns and tell stories, and I just go, okay.
It's just a story. But, you got to admit, it's got some, I can see why it's such an intriguing story. I mean, haven't there been shamanic practices all over the world where they have tried to either bring back the dead or prevent the death from fully occurring? Or if they can rejuvenate the flesh early enough? Didn't the Egyptians try that to rejuvenate?
Yeah, they did. I mean, that's what mummification was all about. I mean, it was an attempt at some sort of immortality for the body. However, with this story of the three kings, what David is saying is perfectly true. These were gifts that were valuable in and of themselves, and they were given because they were valuable, without any significance necessarily attached to them. It's just like if you were a visiting dignitary, you would bring something that would be unique to your own country to the place that you're visiting. In other words, if I'm going to go visit somebody in the United States, I'm not going to bring them, a box of Folgers coffee, because they could just buy it in a store there.
Yep. Just curiosities. We got some interesting stuff going on in the chat room, and JoJo, of course, is cracking people up. All right, next slide. Okay, so frankincense, for those of you who don't know it, it's actually a resin that's obtained from the boswellia trees. It's like reminds me of amber, where you can have an insect trapped in amber. It's thick like a syrup almost. And it becomes really hardened, but it's found in high qualities, come from Arabia. It's used, tree bark is, the bark of the tree is scraped with a knife so that the gum resin oozes out as a milky droplet, which then gradually dries off in the sun. The first scrapings are thrown away, and only the second or preferably third are harvested. Frankincense occurs in small, brittle, ovoid tears. They're usually of a pale yellow color, frequently with a greenish, bluish, or reddish tinge, often opalescent and translucent. If you look in the lower right-hand corner of that picture, you can see how it's dripping down like syrup. It's a thick, thick syrup. So that's how they harvest it. They actually take knives and cut it open and scrape it out of these trees. So it's a lot of work to just get a certain quantity of that stuff. Yeah, David, what's up? You're muted, Dave.
I had to find a mute button.
That's okay.
Yeah, you can hear me now. I look at that and I think back to the days when turpentining was a big issue down here in South Georgia, and I have some what they call cat claws. Put slashes in the pine trees and then put little tin holders up underneath them. They nail them on, and it would collect the pine sap. And I have trees on my place that look exactly like that, but it's pine resin. And amber is supposed to be a pine resin, by the way. But anyway, but it's very similar. And also, turpentine, the old timers used to take a teaspoon of turpentine and mix it with a glass of water and drink it once or twice a week. As just help with ailments. So anyway,
I've used it myself.
Is that the United States version of?
I've used turpentine myself to cure a fever. It's you take about 1 tablespoon of it and just take it like that and swig some water down after it as a chaser, because it does have kind of an unpleasant taste.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Okay, next slide, Lori.
It tastes like pine sap. Those of us naturalists, if I'm down in the woods and I see a decent piece of pine sap, I just grab it and throw a chunk in my mouth. But anyway, it does
Really?
taste
You
like
chew it?
pine.
Ooh.
You chew it just for fun?
Yeah.
Well, not
You
just
could
for
do
fun,
that.
because I know it has some type of healing properties, because the old timers have done it, and the Native Americans could just peel it off a tree, I mean, but
Yeah.
anyway, so I didn't want to deviate from it, but
No, it's okay. That's just like a
pine
school.
sap and that kind of thing, and different trees, like, you get maple syrup by tapping a tree. So, there's a lot of medicine in trees.
You weren't a fan of John Denver's by any chance, were you? He swore by
Say
the
that
trees.
again?
Were you a fan of John Denver?
Yeah, John
Yeah,
Denver
but not.
himself. Yeah, he planted like 750,000 trees
And he
by
ate
his
them.
own hand.
He
Yeah,
freaking ate them.
by his own hand. Yeah.
He ate tree bark in his cereal. I'm not kidding. I thought it was a
Mhm.
joke when I was growing up. He actually did it.
Wow. I've never heard that before.
Well, he
Wow.
said he did, but
And most of them, he actually planted in Australia because he married an Aboriginal Australian woman.
Oh, did he?
Wow,
Yes.
that explains it.
Wow, that explains it.
Mhm.
Woo. Well, I don't know how much more you want to. Oh, look here, David. The third bullet point. The Nubians chewed it for sore mouth. It was advocated for gout and broken heads. Wow, David. The Nubians chewed it. So there you go. You're not alone. Culpeper recommends frankincense to heat and bind, fill up ulcers and flesh, stop the bleeding. Frankincense and myrrh have similar properties, but frankincense is more powerful for the lungs. That's the difference. Remember when Khadijah was ill? If she were here tonight, she would tell you she mixed that frankincense in with the blue lotus oil. And she was actually inhaling some of that in she used an inhaler, an diffuser of some kind to inhale it, and it knocked that chest congestion and cough right out of her. And she was back on her feet within days. She was using the frankincense.
Yeah.
In 1 year around 1200 BC, the Temple of Ammon in Thebes used 2,189 jars of what hypnotic scent, useful to mask the smell of cremations. We talked about that. It was also used medicinally. It was an aromatic between 2000 and 3000 BC in Western Arabia. They used it for mostly like incense to burn for aroma. Okay, next one. Okay, this one here, Boswellia catarrhifex, right?
No, Boswellia carterii.
Catarii. Okay.
Carterii.
So what are they talking about?
Well, that's the Latin name, and it means the Boswellia tree as discovered by a man named Carter. That's what that means.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they just couldn't say the Carter tree effect.
No.
Be too simple. Keep it simple, Spirit. Energetics, bitter, astringent, pungent, sweet, heating. Tissues, works on all tissue elements. Circulatory, reproductive, nervous, lymphatic, and respiratory systems. Actions are astringent, expectorant, antispasmodic, rejuvenative, analgesic, antiseptic. Indications, I can't even pronounce it.
Amenorrhea, dysmenorrhea, menopause, cough, asthma, bronchitis, arthritis, rheumatism, traumatic injuries, ulcerated surfaces, anemia, and pyuria.
Okay, so if frankincense can do all this, and I know it's probably difficult to get because look at what they have to go through to harvest it.
It's not that expensive. It's about maybe for $30 you can get about a small handful of it.
Right. Okay. So, but Big Pharma wants you to spend money on all their little magic pills to treat every single thing I just mentioned here.
Yeah, because they can't patent something like this. They can't patent a natural sap, tree sap, or a crystallized tree sap, or anything like that. Similarly, they can't patent something like Ormus because it's in nature. So you can't patent nature.
All right, well, let's talk about that. Keep going, because what they're going to do is they're going to mix the ormus with the frankincense. Here's the benefits of myrrh. This is the last slide, you guys, and then Dalibor's going to talk to you about more specifically about what he's doing. This is from the Yoga of Herbs on Ayurveda. Myrrh is one of the most famous and ancient substances used for preventing decay, reversing the aging process. Here you go. Rejuvenating body and mind. It is closely related to the Gugul of Ayurvedic medicine, to an important Ayurvedic Nasayana.
Nasayana.
What's that, Dalibor?
No, I don't know.
Me either. I don't know what they mean. I think all this is more talking about Indian holistic healing. In somebody else that knows that would be better. But myrrh helps dispel old and stagnant blood from the uterus. So if you, so it's a cleansing for women.
I would suggest, that the words mumbo jumbo come from Ayurvedic Nasayana, because the word, for example, the word gibberish actually comes from alchemy, because there was a famous alchemist named Geber who wrote so cryptically that no other alchemist could figure out what he wrote down.
Yeah.
And that's where the term gibberish comes from. So, it might seem kind of irreverent to say that perhaps the words mumbo jumbo come from Sanskrit.
Well, now, a member of my family who traveled to India frequently came back with jars of myrrh, because you see here, it dispels old and stagnant blood from the uterus, and it aids in new tissue growth. It catalyzes healing of sores and wounds while stopping pain. It also dispels repressed emotions, and its purifying action extends to the subtle body. She brought it back because she was having problems with her uterus, and this is how they were treating it over there, and she felt 100% better. So she brought it back here to the States with her, and this is back in 1970, 73, when she was bringing this back. Myrrh possesses true tonic, stimulant, and rejuvenative powers, along with strong detoxifying effects. As such, it is more powerful and balanced herb than golden seal or other bitter detoxifiers, which weaken the body in long-term use. Yet it is not as effective as these in acute conditions. So, not for emergencies.
That golden seal, that's frequently used by people in the United States who have to pass urine tests for drugs, because it clears all the drugs out of your system so that they don't show up in the urine. So
detoxifies.
Yeah, so actually you should be using myrrh because it's less toxic than the golden seal.
That's interesting.
So now, I know this was a lot to absorb very quickly, but you've got frankincense, you've got myrrh, you've got all these healing properties, and now we're going to mix it with the ormus.
Well, see, Ormus itself is most likely comes from the Bible as manna, and it appeared pretty much out of nowhere to the Israelites, according to the Bible, where it literally means in ancient Hebrew, what is it? And in the Papyrus of Ani, which is an ancient Egyptian document that's referenced in the Book of the Dead, there's a passage where every other line is, what is it? What is it? And it basically goes like, what is the substance that creates life? What is the substance that provides immortality, heals the sick, raises the dead, all that stuff? And it's always mana, or what is it? So modern...
Oh, this is the mana that they've... The mana from heaven?
One of the theories is that mana from heaven is actually Ormus. And Ormus, according to various theories, goes back to ancient Egypt, where it was extracted from the soil or from the Dead Sea and used by the kings and by the pharaohs to extend life and cure diseases, and also to improve general well-being.
Right, so they knew it existed. If the alchemists produced it for the pharaohs, and they're out in the desert fleeing the Egyptians and crossing the deserts, and manna starts falling from heaven. So who produced the manna?
That's kind of an unknown. That's not really explained, but it appears in a couple of, or I should say, gold in its potable form appears a couple of times in the Bible. Most notably, when Moses comes back from the mountain the second time and he sees the Israelites worshiping a golden calf, he takes the calf and burns it and forces everybody to drink the ashes of the cow. Chemically speaking, or metallurgically speaking, that's impossible. You can't take a gold statue and burn it, because all you'll get is a pool of liquid metal. You'll get an ingot of gold. That's all you'll get. Modern Ormus, or the stuff that purports to be Ormus, or monoatomic gold, was recently discovered in the 1970s by a man named David Radius Hudson, who extracted it from his own cotton fields in the Arizona desert. And he was having problems with not getting enough plant growth and stuff like that. So he was playing around with the soil and trying to find out if it was the pH that was doing it. So he was doing various things to it, like adding acids to it, adding alkalis to it to get the optimal combination. And essentially, what he was able to do was extract from his own soil a substance that he had tested, and it was this. It was Ormus. Okay, Ormus.
Yep.
And he had a friend that worked in a lab, and he had his friend analyze it. And at first, the test results indicated that it was like ordinary chemical elements like phosphorus, sodium, calcium, the usual. And he ran it for 15 seconds, which was the usual procedure. But he said, no, run it for longer. And the longer he ran it, the more different kinds of chemical substances he was detecting in there, up to and including gold. So
Okay.
he theorized that this was like a new form of these various heavy metals, including gold. And he theorized that it was a monoatomic form of them, meaning that it was gold that was not connected in a crystal lattice structure to other gold atoms in the form of what we traditionally know as gold metal, which is the yellow stuff. So the traditional method of extracting Ormus is to take soil, or in my case, what I use is dead sea salt, mix that with water, filter it to get out any of the extraneous substances that don't belong there, and add a mixture of sodium hydroxide and baking soda to that solution, and in order to get the Ormus to settle out. And what follows is a series of decantations or washings, where most people that do this on YouTube or on the web, they usually do like 3 or 4 washings. But I've discovered that you have to do at least 12 washings, because it starts exhibiting various electrostatic and other anomalous effects after the 9th washing.
Let's talk about the ingredients. Let's start with step one.
Step one, I bought 2 kilograms of dead sea salt. 2 kilograms of dead sea salt. That's 2,000 grams.
And why dead sea salt, Delbor?
Because dead sea salt contains has a higher concentration of Ormus than ordinary things like regular sea salt or soil. You can also extract it from soil and other substances, but this is one of the ones where it's really easy to extract. That's why it's used so commonly in like these various recipes. To that 2,000 grams, I added enough water to make a solution. And to that, I filtered this, of course. There was only a few bits of crud in it that don't belong there. To this solution, I added a mixture of 268 grams of half and half sodium hydroxide, pure drain cleaner, and baking soda.
Drain cleaner?
Yeah, because drain cleaner in solution has a pH of 13, and the baking soda has a somewhat lower pH. When you mix them half and half together in solution, and they give you They give, in other words, if you mix it with the salt water, you get a pH of less than 10.7. You don't want to go above 10.7 because that will extract various toxic metals from that Dead Sea salt that you don't want in your resulting Ormus powder.
What's in the drain cleaner, though?
Nothing. It's just sodium hydroxide.
Okay.
And you can actually, I've made sodium hydroxide on my own myself out of the ashes of wood. You can make it on your own, but that's a whole other procedure.
Okay.
And so you mix the two together, and you get something that looks like this.
Okay.
Which is, if you can see, it's got water, and it's already settling out.
What kind of water are you using, honey?
Just regular water. Just regular water.
Okay.
You don't have to use distilled water because I do have a water distillation machine, but that would take forever, and it would just take too long. And plus, it's not necessary. All you do is you mix these three substances together. You mix it up really well, and you let it sit for at least 24 hours for the first decantation. Then, after all this settles out and the top part is completely clear, you drain that clear part off. Why do you do that? Because the clear part contains all the dissolved salt, all the dissolved sodium hydroxide, and all the dissolved sodium bicarbonate or baking soda. So all that stuff comes out of it. You're not getting any of that stuff into your body if you do all the washings. So you repeat this exact same procedure 12 times. But here's the weird thing. Normally, you would expect the solution to get clearer and clearer and clearer, and because you're losing buoyancy in the solution, you would expect it to settle out quicker and quicker. This is the case up to and including the 9th decantation. But after the 9th decantation, you get a bizarre effect where the solution gets a lot cloudier than you would expect, and becomes more difficult to decant because it takes longer for it to settle out. So you do 12 decantations, and then you dry it out. After drying out, you get this stuff. This is pure Ormus, a small sample of it, and I put this into a pure, clean, washed glass of olives, and if you notice, it's sticking to the edges. Why is it doing that? Because it's exhibiting its own unique electrostatic effects. That you shouldn't be getting that in any kind of powder, any kind of pure powder like that. If you take flour or pure sugar, you're not going to get it sticking to the sides if the sides are perfectly clean and dry, like when you put dry powder into it. Now, as regards the effects of Ormus, I take about a teaspoon every day. The immediate effect that you notice from the outset is better sleep. That's the first and most notable effect. After about 3 or 4 days, the sleeping effect is not as pronounced. You don't sleep as well, but since I haven't been taking this for as long as some people have, I've only been taking this for maybe 6 months. They say that it improves longevity, it improves health, and everything. I'm just doing it for general health because I generally speaking am a healthy individual. So this is just part of the things that I'm doing in addition to things like colloidal silver, the elixir of life. Some alchemists would theorize that this would be the elixir of life, but there's as many elixirs of life as there are definitions of alchemy. It depends on whom you ask. Basically, getting back to that ancient Egyptian thing, they discovered remnants of an ancient Egyptian laboratory in the Sinai Desert, where they uncovered jars full of this stuff. They didn't know what it was. But later on, they analyzed it and they found out that it was actually Ormus, exactly the same material that I just showed you.
But they didn't have baking soda back then, did they?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
They did?
Yeah.
And they had that other ingredient that you find in the drain cleaner?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay, and
like I said, you can make your own lye. It's a natural substance.
So where did the frankincense and myrrh come in then?
Well, those are herbal preparations. This is a mineral preparation. So it's at a different frequency, and it does slightly different things.
So they took it together, though, but they took the white powder, which is the Ormus, or manna.
Well, the way the Egyptians would make it is they would crystallize the Ormus or dry it out the same way that they do that the ancients would use for making sugar, and it would produce these cones because they would filter it in a cone shaped piece of paper. So once you dry that out, it forms a cone. That's why you have that classical image of Thoth or Osiris / Thoth holding this like cone-shaped piece of white substance in his hand and directing it at I believe horse. I'm not exactly sure, but why else would the ancient Egyptians go through all this effort to depict one of their highest gods as holding a piece of this stuff? If there wasn't something to it deeper than
Yeah.
what meets the eye. See, if you take this to a lab, to a scientist, he's going to tell you, oh, it contains calcium hydroxide, but it's not calcium hydroxide. Calcium hydroxide is lime, slaked lime, which the Romans used in place of cement. Now, I've tested this. I've mixed it with sand, added water, and it does not form cement. So I've done other experiments with it where I've tried germinating seeds, and it does increase the speed of germination, similarly to the results of my pyramid experiments, where I've watered plants with pyramid water as versus a control group that was watered with normal water, and the pyramid watered plants were better than the ones that were watered with normal water. Same thing holds for water. For plants that you water with the Ormus water. And by Ormus water, I mean after the 12th decantation, whatever is left on top of the Ormus, you drain that off and you add this to the water that you would use to water your plants.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't use it straight because that's a bit too strong. And the most common documented effect of Ormus would be spontaneous calcification of tooth cavities, and this has in fact happened to me because not from the Ormus, but from other substances I was taking, like herbals, colloidal silver, and also the fact that I haven't used toothpaste in about 40 years. I don't use toothpaste. I actually use just baking soda, and you don't even really need that. You just need the toothbrush itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just need the toothbrush.
Ken uses the pink salt, and he also Himalayan salt.
Mm-hmm.
You can use pink salt, yeah.
You have to get the pH to 10.6 to make Ormus.
Yes, anything less than 10.7 works.
So how do you test that? You have a test kit to test the pH level?
You can do that. Yeah, except that what I did was I don't have a testing kit or whatever, so I just used chemistry, and I found out what is the pH of sodium hydroxide, what is the pH of baking soda, and what happens when you mix them together half and half, and you get about 10.7. In other words, you can't exceed 10.7 by adding something to the solution that in and of itself is 10.7.
Go ahead, David. Thank you, Delver.
If I may ask, what is your parts ratio? So how much salt to how much baking soda to how much, lime?
2,000 grams of salt, enough water to make a solution. So yeah, 2,000 grams of salt and half of 268, which would be 134 grams of NaOH and 134 grams of baking soda, which is NaHCOO3, I believe. So yeah, so out of that, I extracted exactly 241 grams of Ormus. And that's another anomaly you discover, because you shouldn't be getting nowhere nearly as much material. Why? Because that Dead Sea salt is only supposed to contain about 10% impurities above and beyond ordinary sodium chloride. So in other words, you should only be getting something like 200 grams. In other words, where is that 41 grams coming from? Some people have theorized that Ormus is actually dark matter, uh, which doesn't behave according to the known laws of physics that we know of in our ordinary Newtonian universe down here on Earth. So that's one of the anomalies. It also, like I said, exhibits anti-gravity effects, because after the ninth washing, as the solution loses buoyancy, you would expect it to fall down quicker. But instead, even this is taking forever, and it's been sitting here for an hour, and it's still not separated. Because normally, after you do each of the separations, you would do that for 24 hours. You get a layer of Ormus at the bottom, pure white, and then
it's like paste,
clear
right?
water. Yes,
like white
yes.
paste.
Yeah, white paste. You get perfectly clear water above that. So, and that's kind of an anomaly as well, because that shouldn't be happening.
Well, once you get all that water off and you take that paste, and then what do? Dry it out?
Yeah, you just dry
naturally.
it out. Yeah, I put it in a stainless steel saucepan and keep it on low heat for pretty much the whole day. I put it on number 2 setting or 3. At first I put it to maybe 10, until it starts boiling, so it doesn't sputter and make a whole big mess. And then just lower it to about 2, keep it there, and come back when it's completely dry, and then scrape it. And using the spoon, just grind it up, because it tends to form clumps. And just put it in a jar and keep. They say you should keep it in a dark place, so I have mine in a yogurt container that's made of opaque plastic, and I just take about 1 heaping teaspoon of that every single day.
Okay, so yes or no, marketing hype. All these fancy jars of Ormus that they sell on Amazon and all these different spiritual shops.
Overpriced.
Only our salts come from the Dead Sea, or the salts we use are from the ancient coast off of Australia, where the most ancient seas. I mean, they go on and on and on
No,
about the quality. It's all hype.
It's overpriced, because you want to know something. I paid 2.39 euros per kilo, and I bought it at the supermarket here. For those of you who don't know, I live in Germany, so I paid like 5 euros for the sea salt, and they sell it in the cosmetic section because it's not intended as a foodstuff. So 5 euros for the salt, and then maybe 2 euros for the lye, and 1 euro for the baking soda.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they'll go through all. They'll go through this. We went through the jungles of. I'm like, come on.
It's exactly the
sales
same
pitch.
Yeah, you should really be making your own. I'm not saying that any of that Ormus isn't the real Ormus. I'm just saying that it's overpriced, to say the least.
But let's not forget the intent. The intent part of this.
Oh, the intent is important.
The medical physical part of this.
But let me also say one other thing. It's the same as colloidal silver. I make my own, and I've been making it for about 20 years now. I still use the same 2 pieces of silver from a 1 ounce bar that I cut in half, with each one of those halves being one of the electrodes. And those bars are still the same. In other words, the amount of silver that actually goes into it is very, very low. For 1 ounce of silver, I could make enough colloidal silver to last a small village for an entire lifetime. And it doesn't cost $80 for a small bottle like they charge on Amazon or eBay. But regarding the spiritual Ormus, to use a kind of a made-up term, if alchemy is not just a physical process, but also a metaphysical process of the human body, you could regard the process of extracting Ormus in a metaphysical sense, where the salt is the salt, you are the salt of the earth, your body, gets neutralized by lies, caustic substances. Mm-hmm. And when the 2 interact, they annihilate. And then when you add the living water of life and keep flushing that through your system spiritually, it'll extract all that bad stuff, all the lies, and what you're left with is the spiritual gold, which would be the essence of your soul.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or your spirit. Because, for example, in my language, there's really no two words for spirit and soul. It's one word. It's just that one is a male version of the other. The spirit is the male form of the soul, which is the female form. So it's
let me ask David, what are, in your opinion, David, what do you think some of the side effects or warnings are, things to be cautious about here?
Well, in listening to your process, I would have assumed that if the drying process would have just been natural, but you put it in a pan and heated it, and by heating it, it also, that makes things change. So how long you heat it and what you do with any solution changes the solution, you know? So it's like, oh, so there's a step in there that if somebody wasn't paying attention to, you know, if you don't heat it, what's the difference between drying it naturally versus putting it in a pan and actually heating it? Okay.
Evaporating the water.
So have you done that test?
Well, I have taken like sneak peeks, or I should say sneak, tastes of the Ormus before it was dried, and the taste is exactly the same as after drying. The only reason I dry it is to make it easier to store.
Well, but
And also,
see, from my standpoint, I would have chosen the sun or a natural drying process for myself. But that's why, you know, but you put it in the pan and actually heat it up to dry it.
yeah, we
So
don't get
there's a
sun.
difference there.
Yeah, we don't get sun at this time of the year because, for example, for the past month, it's been raining every single day here. So
I understand.
at this time of the year is not a good time. But also, when I give this out as gifts to people, it's a lot more palatable for somebody to receive a white powder than something that looks like something like white porridge, or something they're not used to necessarily.
I understand. I was just, I'm asking the question for other people. Okay. Well, and for myself, because, you know, there are times when, in doing the research myself, I was thinking, you know, in metallurgy, and the people that I have known as far as herbalists and who I call root doctors, and really good at what they do. They make salves that will cure anything. It would just natural stuff. So, but in that though, if you don't learn certain steps, then you don't really have what you think you got. Okay. So my warning to people is make sure, if you're going to do this on your own, I'm not saying yes or no to this, but in any kind of alchemy, even if you're making a tincture of something from mullein, you know, you don't want to overcook it. You want to make sure you do the process right. Otherwise, you're not going to get the benefits that if you skip something or over. A lot of times in some things, people overheat. So you bring water to a boil and let things steep. You don't boil things unless it's like required. So you have to be careful. So what's in it is one thing, but how you process it is another. You know, so follow the steps. Make sure if you're going to do this stuff that you are very careful in what you do, because people will experiment on their own, and it could be detrimental to their health versus being beneficial, you know.
Oh, sure.
I want to make a couple of things. In the old days, the old timers made lye out of ashes. Okay. And the old timers way back, they would clean out their fireplaces and their stoves, and they would put it in a V shape with canvas, and they would pour water over the ashes, and what ended up on the bottom was lye. And they made lye soap with it. That's where it came from. So lye has been around for a very long time. Tabar's using big chemical names, and it freaks people out. But lye has been around for as long as there have been fires and water, So, but anyway, so I would say, in listening to that, in all the Native American lore, even down in South America, not to say I know as much about South America, mind you, but of all the powwows and of all the people and of all the vendors that I've known over the years, I can't remember any of the Native vendors that I know or have met and been with. Do they have gold? They just don't. It's always silver. Now, they understand the benefits of silver, and they wear a lot of it, as jewelry and things with different stones. But gold is almost taboo. I mean, even Native American, folks who have a little bit of money and whatever, you don't see them decked out in gold. They just don't do it.
No.
And I'm sort of averse to gold myself. And I'm much more receptive to copper and to brass and to silver myself. But so on Turtle Island here in North America, there isn't anything that I know of to where they would do that. Okay. Now back to the soil thing. Your friend was in the desert somewhere. Where, Dalabar?
In Arizona.
Arizona. Okay. Let me state this. Not every soil has gold in it. Okay. There are gold in the mountains that wash down from the mountains and will settle in plains areas. Okay. So I'm not going to find gold in the clay on my hill. I just ain't. It's not here. And if it is, it's really small. So dirt is not necessarily dirt. Check where you live if you're going to use dirt. Okay. I'm just saying. But
I've extracted Ormus from regular stones that I found in my various hikes and whatever. I took a stone, I dissolved that stone in vinegar, and then did exactly the same procedure to it as what I described. Only instead of using the sea salt as a starting point, I used that dissolved stone as the starting point, and I made the Ormus out of it, and I ate it. And I had the same effects on me, in that it facilitated sleep and promoted general well-being. So you really can extract it from literally anything. And I have performed experiments on this using natural vinegar, where if you dissolve this in vinegar, it won't dissolve, but it'll turn like a nice golden color. And if you add concentrated vinegar to it, it'll completely dissolve, and the entire solution will turn bright yellow. And then you can actually get that same Ormus back by adding about 2 or 3 teaspoons of pure baking soda to it, which I did, and you get the same exact material concentrated at the bottom, settled out as the Ormus powder that you started out with. So being the fool that I am, as well as the backyard scientist, I drank that solution, knowing full well what it was. It was baking soda mixed with vinegar. Drank it, and within about a half an hour, had a very violent diarrheic reaction. But then after that abated, I just took the Ormus as regular Ormus, and I consumed that, and it had the same beneficial effect as the regular Ormus. So, I guess. I should say, yes, I am not a doctor, and I don't even play one on YouTube, but and do it on your own responsibility. But yeah, you can extract Ormus from anything. But they say forest soils are the best. The Dead Sea salt is the best, but you can use Himalayan salt and a couple of other substances.
Hey, well, welcome, Robert. Good to see you, brother. Glad you could make it. Michelle's still walking. She's got her boots.
All right,
doing her walking.
My follow-up on this is from the Native American. There's a lot of tradition where they eat different kinds of clay. The old timers around here, I've got a hand dug well, and there's clay that's suspended in the water, and so I get a good dose of minerals every day. And people have said, you're going to die. You got an open well and all this, and I'm like, okay, well, several of them are already dead, and I'm still here. So I'm not saying one thing's better or another, but
Yeah.
Look at me.
I'm
53 years old, and a lot of people tell me you don't look like you're 53. So in other words, I don't take any creams. I don't use any cosmetics, none whatsoever. But I guess I must be doing something right because I grow my own aloe. I don't use it on my skin or anything. I eat the aloe once a week as part of my usual daily vitamin and mineral
Yeah, I was
ritual
gonna
that
ask
includes
you.
the Ormus.
I was going to ask you. Yeah, it's about a once a week kind of thing, right?
No,
You
I take
take it.
Ormus every day. I take Ormus every day, but I also take other vitamins and minerals every single day, as well as about half a bulb of garlic, raw garlic, which I eat every day, and I've been doing that for about the past 30 years.
You take
So,
Ormus every day, huh?
yes, Ormus.
What about colloidal silver?
No, I only take that if I'm sick. Because, for example, my parents, they're big believers in colloidal silver. They used to take it every day, and now they're grayish blue. They have grayish blue skin. So,
I've seen the
and
pictures.
that's an
Uh-huh.
irreversible skin condition. It is non-fatal, but it's not exactly. Some people might find that unappealing. So I choose not to take colloidal silver every day, only if I'm sick, which never happens.
I heard it was recommended that you only do it like once every 7
which
days.
never happens. I mean, I had a urinary bladder infection, which is kind of rare for men to get, and it was very painful. And I was like, "Oh, what should I know what to do?" Made my own colloidal silver, and I used that, and it was gone by the next day. It was gone. So because it passes through your system, and as it comes out of your body, it disinfects everything along the way where it's infected. So you're targeting the exact areas that are afflicted.
I bet it went away really fast too.
Yeah, it did. Uh-huh.
I still can't get over the the idea of drinking or eating components of rocks. It's just
Well, if you take dolomite, that's calcium and magnesium carbonate. That's a rock.
magnesium and calcium and magnesium.
That's a rock. If you take any of the trace minerals that you would get at, say, CVS, those are all rocks. If you take, I don't know, strontium, chromium picolinate, if you take any of these, those are all rocks.
But they're in very minuscule amounts.
Well, yeah, but when you look at it, every plant contains elements of the soil, the rocks that it came from. You're eating rocks indirectly every day, no matter what you eat. It's just the way you look at it.
Tree roots and plant roots pull those minerals in for sustenance.
Exactly.
But like I said, we're getting it naturally in trace amounts. We're not manufacturing a tablespoonful of powder made out of metal.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing all the pluses for this, but I'm not hearing about, except for what you just mentioned about the colloidal silver, using too much of it turning your skin silver or gray. I'm not hearing about the side effects. Is it because there are no side effects?
There pretty much are no side effects.
So there's no caution here? There's no caution here?
Pretty much no.
Okay.
It's just like vitamin C. You take as much as your body can handle, because if you take too much of it, the body just excretes it. You'll get some diarrhea, and that's about it. This is even safer than vitamin C, I would say.
Didn't you mention the Ormus had that effect on you at first, the diarrhea?
No. That's when I did that extra step to it, where I dissolved the resulting Ormus. This stuff, I dissolved it in vinegar, and I tried dissolving in vinegar, but it didn't dissolve. So I used concentrated vinegar, and it did dissolve. And then to get that back, I reduced it down with baking soda, drank that, and that's what caused my diarrhea. So no, I'm not saying anybody should do that particularly.
Lori mentioned collagen for my joints. I'm going to order some collagen. For my knees. Yeah.
All disease is caused by either inflammation or blockage of energy centers, energy points. So what is arthritis? It is an inflammation. And what does vitamin C do? It reduces inflammation. So does any astringent. So does which as you noted in that slide presentation, one of the astringents would be boswellia, which is frankincense. So you could be using the frankincense, the collagen, and the vitamin C for your arthritis. And
Well, that's what Isby's saying he's doing. He's taking collagen for his hip pain. He takes, and William takes magnesium, zinc, and calcium. I do too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have that.
American
I
diet
take that
lacks
too.
magnesium big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that.
Most people also lack zinc, and you know what's the really easiest way to diagnose if you have a zinc deficiency? If you lose your sense of smell.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you have perfume around that you know what it smells like, and you smell it and you can't smell anything, or it's not as intense, that means you should take some zinc.
Okay. It's 10:30, 10:33. So we've been going for about an hour and a half. I just want to make this one point here because somebody just said something about ordering. Just be careful of what you order, folks, and where you get it from, and how much dosage you take. Don't overdo it, right?
Yeah, it's better to make your own.
But here's a biggie, okay? And I was talking to David Null about this. Be careful of who you watch on YouTube. They all have a different process. They're all experimenting with all kinds of stuff. So just make sure if you're watching one of these folks on YouTube. I mean, I saw a guy the other day do something, and I was like, oh, hell no. So there's just common sense things that you ought not to be screwing with. So you never know who, is a reputable source unless you happen to know them from a long time and you've been watching them and they've never stirred you wrong before. But there are people out there doing all kinds of weird stuff, Dalibor. I mean, they're using arsenic. They're using.
Oh no!
Yeah, they're using arsenic. I mean, so how do you know when you're? I mean, this is the danger of YouTube being so popular, and Ormus being such a popular thing now. Everybody's watching Ormus videos.
See, that's the thing. To the people who asked about if I have a YouTube channel, no, I don't have a YouTube channel because YouTube is not a free speech platform. The only platform I'm on, I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on Facebook, I'm only on Minds.com. And if you look me up using my name, you'll find me. But I have a couple of decrepit videos on making colloidal silver because I'm not that well coordinated with the camera and stuff like that. So I don't generally make my own videos. But I do have lots of articles there. And one of them is about making Ormus. So if you search, go to my section of that page and search out Ormus, you'll find it.
Oh, good. So you have a he doesn't have a demo video yet. He's working on it, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. My friends here, Mary Wynn, Michelle, you guys, I know that Max Vision Remote has done a couple of shows on this where he's actually showed you how to make the colloidal silver. I'm not sure about the Ormus. He does make the Ormus quite safely. He was talking about it in David's show the other night. So it might be if you go through Max Vision Remote Viewing, I go through his videos and look for it, you might find a video there. I'm not sure if he's done the Ormus, but I know he did the colloidal silver because I watched him do it. And he takes it out. He takes it regularly, and so I would trust Max Vision, definitely. And there might be some others that folks can recommend here, but I can't think of anybody outside of Max. But that would be great, Dalibor, if you did a video. I know you have to straighten up in there to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that I live in filth. Yeah.
Yeah. But and I know you're searching for resources too. You found the one guy, and I'm like, his experiments just kept failing, and even though he was doing everything metaphysically he could.
But that's the thing. He only did 7 decantations. He didn't go the full 9 yards, the whole 9 yards, so to speak.
Yeah. So so they can go to your page to get that information. They can look for John's videos, and then if you put it together a video for us on the process and the measurements and everything.
I'll try.
When you can, we'll post it and we'll play it.
You bet.
On YouTube for you. Okay. So,
got it.
David, go ahead.
I want to add to this the frankincense and myrrh and the Ormus and everything. Now, understand this, that, Turtle Island, North America, Canada, and that kind of thing, had a totally different way of growing up with alchemy. Okay.
Yep.
And so there are plants and herbs and roots. I mean, I talked about mullein the other day, and where frankincense is burned and stuff, mullein, I've given it to people with asthma issues, and they take a couple of puffs of it, or snip a little bit of it burning of the dried, and it clears it right up. So for me, I had kidney issues and all that, and I took concentrated drops of mullein, and it cured my issues up. And I have, knock on wood, I'm 68 and a half, and I still haven't had issues after 20 years. So there are things, and yellow root is used by folks for the P test as well, by the way. But all these things are natural without having to actually do anything. So for those folks who are a little iffy at doing stuff and can't follow through on things, there are lots of natural herbs and roots, and I would suggest, that there isn't a process there. You might just, take some and make a tea. So if you don't feel like you're inclined to do that, then look for things that might actually be more simple, that are native to North America, because frankincense they don't grow here. Okay. But we got we got pine, we've got different kinds of other trees. We have other kinds of plants and things. So we're importing this old technology.
Right.
The ancients in North America have been using things for 5,000 years.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we're going to talk next week. I mean, Friday with Jules and you, David, on some of what this. Yeah, we're going to cover some of that.
I'm not dissing this. I want folks to understand that. I'm not trying to say that this ain't a good thing. I'm not going there. But we're talking about Central Europe and Egypt and, them folks versus us. And we got along just fine without it. So, some folks might just find the answer close by with natural remedies.
Closer to home with natural remedies.
Give it a shot. Yeah.
And that's why we're going to talk about that. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
People will focus on buying something in a jar because it's something, and you should just support your local folks here in the United States that grow herbs and things. And, I've got a bag of stuff in there that I can make a tea with, and it was like $3 for a big bag full of this dried herb.
I totally agree. So, basically, you should also be eating the same foods as the foods that would be native to your genetic lineage. In other words, if you're of European descent, you should only be eating those fruits and vegetables that are grown or that are endemic to Europe. Just like since you're an American, you should be eating more, corn or maize, the proper expression, and American foods rather than foods that are imported from other continents. Definitely. Yeah.
And to that point, there are many Native Americans that I've known over the years and powwows and so forth. And many of them are overweight and have diabetes before they're 50. And that's because their diet is wrong. And the elders are much, I met a 90-year-old woman who was Lakota, and she's like, these young people don't know what they're doing. And she chain smoked. I mean, as one went out, she lit the next one with her cigarette. And 90 years old and as spry as she could be and healthy, but her siblings and other folks and, in the community were, 200 pounds and overweight and had all kinds of chronic issues, and 90 years old and still going. I love it, Yep. So it does matter. And for what people eat and drink. So, and one thing I'll put in a plug, and Max and I talked about this. If you're still drinking out of plastic bottles, Max and I both agree that our arthritis almost went away simply by stopping drinking from plastic containers. Now, not milk or water, it's the type of plastic. But if you're drinking water of any kind out of a plastic container other than a milk jug, it's the type of plastic. You know, both of us have swear by this. So there are things that we can do naturally to just change our diets and our habits. And I'll be 69 in September. And 3 years ago, I could not do this. You know,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
hands were all, I would wake up in the middle of the night. So the things that are your ailments, you may take something else to try to fix an ailment when the ailment may be what you're doing to your body to begin with. So before you go spending a lot of money on something, not to say it don't work, but you may be trying to fix a condition that you yourself could fix by not, you know, not drinking plastics or, you know, changing your diets and things like that. You will feel better if you do these things. I promise you. And Max agrees, you know.
I have a good anecdote about that because I used to suffer from hemorrhoids, and you know, I was taking all these different things for it. And one of my friends pointed out, you know what, you're thinking exactly like a drug addict. You're thinking of something you can take to take the problem away. Instead, why not start thinking the opposite of you know, what can you eliminate to make the problem go away? And I was like, well. I thought about it, and I was like, I think I may be eating too much spicy food, too much Tabasco sauce, and I was right. So I stopped eating all spicy food, all spicy condiments like Tabasco or sriracha sauce, and a year later, I noticed that I had no hemorrhoids, and I was like, oh my God, it worked. So in other words, you know, stop thinking like a drug addict that taking something will help you, as opposed to eliminating something helping
it's a good
you.
idea. Yeah,
That's one of the things that Casey discussed in a lot of his readings was, you know, to tell this person to stop eating this and to add this to their diet. You know,
so yeah, nowadays I can eat you know, spicy foods, but not every single day. You
right?
know, once in a while is not a problem. Yeah.
That's right.
It's
People
the
who
chronic.
I was watching a Prilosec commercial, and I was like, I've known people who take Prilosec because of gas and all that, but I've also watched these people eat, and I don't eat like that. And I don't have an upset stomach hardly ever, or gas, you know. And so how I cook and what I eat and where I eat and that. So people will go, well, I can't believe I got gas. Well, where'd you go? Well, I had stopped by McDonald's and I stopped over here and I had a this, and the other thing. And then they wonder why their stomach's upset. And because I don't do that, you know. And I used to have stomach issues all the time. So I speak from experience in this. If you change your diet, if you've got problems, you should look at what you're sticking in your mouth.
Oh yeah, yeah, and a lot of these fast food places are the culprit a lot of the times, especially in the United States. Well, I used to live in the United States in New York City, and you know, a lot of my so-called food consisted of stuff like Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King, the usual. And I can tell you one thing: when I moved back to Europe for the fourth time. My health improved dramatically. I also lost weight because if you look at what all these products contain, they all contain sugar, even stuff that shouldn't contain sugar, like salami contains corn syrup. You know, what is that doing in there? What are all these additives doing in there that don't belong there? Here in Europe, if I buy salami, even a cheap salami at the local Lidl, all it contains is meat, water, some kind of stabilizer, and that's about it. It doesn't contain sugar. So just by switching diets, I came back to a normal weight because not that I was ever overweight, but it just it helped my overall health to come back here. You know.
Yeah.
Right. So to our point about this and Ormus and anything else you might take, you should at least look at what your diet is, what your intake is. And I know people who are putting too much stuff on their skin. I mean, they're like lathering up with all the stuff. Oh, it's natural. Right. But you can't go anywhere without lathering up 3 or 4 times a day. The skin can't breathe, for God's sakes. But, you know,
I don't use shampoo. I haven't used shampoo in about more than 40 years. Yet, you know, my hair is quite healthy, no bald spots, nothing. I don't use shampoo, and I only use pure castile soap. And I used to make my own soap out of a lye that I made myself. So I only use pure soap, and I don't use any kind of cosmetics, none whatsoever. If I want to smell nice, I use vanilla extract or lemon extract. So yes, I'll smell like a Danish, but at least it's a natural smell.
And the worst you'll get is
Purple
somebody that
eyeshadow.
might,
Come on.
they might want to come up behind you, Dalamar, and lick you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was accosted by 3 lickers today, you know.
See, lemongrass.
Yeah.
I also have my. I can also make my own if I wanted to, because I have lemon trees here in my house as like house plants.
Right.
So yeah, you would use the leaves and you would press those out and then extract the oil from that, and that has a beautiful aroma. It also improves the mood, and it's a mild disinfectant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't use anything artificial, none. And a lot of people say, "Oh, you don't even use toothpaste?" And I'm like, "No, you don't. It's expensive and it contains toxic fluoride. Why would you be putting that in your body?" Or for example, even some of the dishwashing detergents, they contain sodium lauryl sulfate. What is that doing there? You don't need that. The sodium lauryl sulfate is a carcinogen. Yeah, it's also in every single shampoo. So is methyl isothiazole. And I've been telling people about this. Don't use shampoo. You don't need it. Just look at my hair. I mean, no
well,
problems
I just did
here.
mine, and I didn't use any shampoo. Look at it.
I mean, the ladies were remarking before I started the show that my hair looked so nice, and I'm like, all I did was just comb it. But I used to have bad issues with dandruff, and a friend of mine who's an herbologist said, stop using shampoo.
Mm-hmm.
And, he warned me 25, 30 years ago. So I have modified. And so I have found this, it's an all-purpose soap. But to get stuff out of my hair, it smells, they have different flavors of smell. But just a dash in my hair washes any dirt out of my hair, and I just rinse it naturally. Mm-hmm. And I don't have issues with dandruff for years and years and years, where I used to have it. But, so the care of hair and all that kind of stuff, my friend told me the other day it looked like I could use some if I got split ends. But, but I'm a naturalist in that. So I'm like, I'm not going to use a conditioner unless I have to. But with that said, though, there are so many people who are using things that have an effect on them that they don't know. But, by not using shampoos, by not using certain soaps, and somebody said the other day, oh, Dawn soap, you just put it on your hands. Listen, it's very carcinogenic. It will dry your hands out. I'm an old machinist, and we used to use it. It will crack and dry your hands badly. And to just put it on your hands and wash your hands every day is not a good thing. I'm just saying, find another alternative other than just Dawn. It will hurt your hands, especially.
Yeah, that's why I use only natural soap, like castile soap, which is pure soap. But it's also the so-called prescription drugs or prescription medications that are killing people and making them stupid. Because I always use my grandma as an example. She's 98 years old, going on 99. Her brain is as sharp as a freaking razor. She has some trouble walking, but that's about it. For her 98th birthday, she stepped out of the Catholic Church. She officially had herself excommunicated and confirmed by the city hall. Because here in Germany, we have this thing called the Kirchensteuer, where you have to pay 9% of your income. 9% of your income tax goes to the church. And she felt, after all the debacles regarding the pedophilia, and the fact that the Pope said that you can't get into heaven without a vaccination and all this stuff, she decided to step out of the Catholic Church and become registered as an atheist. Yeah, at the age of for her 98th birthday, I should point out. And she got the approval and everything, but they sent she got an email from the church oh, would you please tell us why, at this age, did you decide to diss us? And so she sent them a whole litany of reasons why she's quitting the Catholic Church and why it's not a good idea for anybody to be a member of that. Because when I moved to Germany, I had the option of registering as a Catholic or as an atheist, and I said no, I'm an atheist. I don't want to be affiliated with any church. Sorry, thank you.
I can't imagine though anybody who could say to you, "Well, why are you leaving?" Because you're supposed to be contributing X amount of dollars from your paycheck. It's like, excuse me, I'd be flipping the bird, man. What?
Yeah, that's the Kirchensteuer.
Here's something simple too. At 98 years old, she realizes that death is facing her sooner than later, right? And she wants to get into heaven.
Not just that, but the other thing I wanted to mention about her.
She wants to get into heaven.
She's wants
like,
to get
no, I'm not going to these guys. You know, they're going to put me in a gated community. No, I want to go to heaven.
Yeah, exactly. But the other thing I wanted to mention about her, and why she's so healthy and why she's so sharp, is she's never taken any prescription medication except on occasion, like antibiotics or whatever. But she doesn't take anything, nothing. All she takes is like pretty much the same vitamins and minerals that I take: vitamin A, D, E, C, B complex, and all the other like micronutrients and stuff like that, and herbals. So that's how people stay healthy. You just stay away from the doctor, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's been almost 4 years since I've been to the doctor. And, you know, my blood pressure was up a little bit. And I'm like, okay. But the blood pressure medicine made me feel worse than my high blood pressure. And I figured if I was going to die, I didn't want to take that and feel that way every day, you know. All the other medications and stuff I was on. I walk better than I did 5 years ago. I was in a wheelchair and, you know, foaming at the mouth because of drugs and pharmaceuticals. And, you know, over the last 5 years, I'm here now in better shape than I was back then. So it's like, what did I do? I took a choice in my life and said, no, I'm going to do better. You know, I still have a little Tabasco sauce once in a while, but I agree with you. Upset stomachs, you know. People will eat pepperonis and things knowing it'll tear them up. They do it anyway, you know, just, you know, it's the simple things that you change.
The other thing
will make a big difference in your life. And so, but to the point about the Ormus, if people want to rely on a certain thing to cure them, but they still maintain an unhealthy, you know, intake of stuff, then, you know, you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
Exactly, yeah. And getting back to the sugar part, sugar is also one of the things that I've eliminated completely from my diet for the past, I don't know, 30 years. And I don't eat anything that's sweet except fruit. I don't even drink fruit juice because that's concentrated. And the reason for that is because that's how cancer forms in the body. When your oxygen levels get depleted to less than 60% of what the cells need, the cells start deriving their energy from fermentation. And what they start fermenting is sugar. That's why people who have cancer or are about to get cancer crave sugar so much. And that's one of the ways of avoiding cancer is by not eating any sugar at all. And, you know.
Hard to do. I know.
I don't eat anything.
It's like a science for me. Every day, it's a science for me. Everything has sugar in it, even carbohydrates. You know, so I have to balance my proteins and sugars, and I have to do it very scientifically. Guys, it's 10:56. Lori had to go, and we've been going at it for all about 2 hours now. So it's we need to wrap it up, and I want to thank everyone for hanging in there with us. Those who are still in the chat, thank you very much for hanging in there with us. David can go on for 8 hours, and he never gets bored of a topic, and we never get bored of listening to him either. But we got to go. So Dalibor, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And someday, if you get around to videoing your process, that would be really helpful, I think, to everybody.
Like I said, I will try. I will. Yeah, I'll put the effort in. Yeah.
And we'll see David on Friday night with Julianne, and Gazakov. They're coming on to talk about different types of herbs from different parts of the world. I mean, he's from New Zealand. She's from Australia. David's got some knowledge of American, and I'm sure Crystal does too. And we're gonna hit on some of these helpful herbs that can do a lot of these kind of things for us that we can get out of our own garden. You know. So I hope to see everyone on Friday evening. Much love to everyone. Peace out and have a good evening.
Peace.
Bye.
Live long and prosper.